Good afternoon, everyone. Figuring out the mic. My name is Kate Meyer, and I'm one of the student directors for Bales. Thank you so much for joining us for this year's final round. So, first and foremost, I just want to thank the Bales Family Endowment for sponsoring Bales each and every year. We've had this competition at Berkeley for over a decade, thanks to the Bales family's generosity. And second most, I just wanted to thank a couple of people who help run Bales every single year. So can we give a big hand for Evelyn Nevin, Caitlin Johnson, and Ivan, our competitions team at Berkeley. They are wonderful and so appreciate all three of you. Next up, our three judges. Thank you so much for being here today. We so appreciate you taking the time to help our advocates learn and grow from Bales. And of course, I wanted to introduce you all to our wonderful advocates. I am so excited to watch these competitors today. I am on the edge of my seat. So going down the line, we have Kate Kuli, Ashley Bremner, Jacqueline Lee, and Katrina Starbird. Let's give them a hand. And a huge thank you to their witnesses who are volunteering their time today as well, Elaine and Max. So without further ado, let's get started.
Appearances for the plaintiff, Your Honor. Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Bremner, and together with my co-counsel, Kate Kuli.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
We represent the plaintiff in today's case, Christian Lake.
Welcome.
At this time, we would like to designate Christian Lake as our party representative.
Okay.
We would also like to ask Your Honor's preference as to movement about the well, as well as approaching opposing counsel, witnesses, and Your Honor.
You can move about the well without asking every time if it's okay. But if you approach a witness, I'd like you to ask if you can approach the witness.
Absolutely. With that, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Jacqueline Lee and my colleague,
Katrina Starbird.
we represent Reality Broadcasting Network, the defendant.
Okay.
And this is Dr. Virgie.
Good afternoon. Welcome. Okay, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. It was all a game to them. Christian Lake had a dream. She wanted for years to go on her favorite reality show, The Island, the defendant's reality show, where people come together on a remote island to compete for a grand prize. It seemed like a dream come true when Christian finally got the chance to compete. She put everything she could into winning, making alliances, winning challenges. It seemed like nothing could stop her. And then it happened. Running during a challenge in the mud and the rain, Christian slipped. And a jagged stick pierced her thigh. Christian was filled with adrenaline. She got up, she kept running. All the way to victory. But that's not all that happened. Christian will tell you that after she got hurt, she was examined by Dr. Jesse Virgie, the head medical doctor for the entire show. That after inspecting her wound, Dr. Virgie let her keep playing through dirty challenges. But Christian will tell you that after the very next challenge, she could barely walk. She'll tell you that she had to get airlifted to the nearest hospital, and there, doctors had to amputate her leg in order to save her life. Because it was all a game to them. That is why we are here today. Because the defendants, Reality Broadcasting Network, are the reason that Christian Lake lost her leg. We brought a charge today, gross negligence. All that means is an extreme lack of care no reasonable person would do. We have a burden. It's just a preponderance of the evidence. That just means more likely than not. We'll meet that burden by proving 3 simple facts. They knew the injury, they knew the risk, and they knew they wanted a show. So let's take these one at a time. First, that they knew the injury. Christian Lake will come before you and she'll tell you how Dr. Virgie investigated her wound. She'll tell you that Dr. Virgie thoroughly inspected it, told her that he wouldn't let her keep playing if there was any risk of infection. Well, here, the Dr. Virgie let her keep playing and sent her back out without any medication to speak of. Next, that they knew the risk. The evidence will show that Dr. Virgie saw this wound for what it was, a risk. Dr. Virgie will tell you that he was concerned when he saw this wound. He knew there was a risk of infection. You'll hear that this was the closest he'd ever come to pulling a contestant from the show. That he let her keep playing. He'll tell you he was mortified when he learned that she'd lost her leg. Finally, that they knew they wanted a show. Christian will come here today and she'll tell you that these challenges were harder and rougher than anything she'd ever seen on TV. Dr. Virgie will even tell you that they decreased food rations this season just because it would make for better ratings. He'll tell you that he texted his boss, producer for this show, Tracy Hofstadt, about his concerns. And she told him to remember that they're making a television show. That they hadn't had any problems with contestants before, and they weren't going to this season. And he'll tell you that he knew when he was inspecting Christian's wound that there were only 2 days left of filming that show. Today, it will be clear. It will be clear that the defendants cared more about how their game looked than if their contestants were safe. And because of that, Christian Lake lost her leg. That's why at the end of this trial, my co-counsel Kate Kuli will come before you and she'll ask that you find the defendants liable for gross negligence. Thank you, Your Honor.
Does the defense have an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Sight, not hindsight. Members of the jury, Miss Lake made it to the Final Four and thought she had a real chance at winning the game. In that final challenge, she ran. She jumped over logs, she waded through mud, and collected puzzle pieces all along the way. Though she tripped and she fell, that did not stop her. Hunger was no object, nor was the injury from her fall. She just got up and she kept going and she emerged victorious. You will hear directly from Miss Lake that her only goal was to win. And to win, as she put it, by any means necessary. You will hear that for years she dreamed of being on this show so that when she finally got the call in early 2024, that was a dream come true. She arrived on the island with one mission: win. To win first place, no matter what. Not maybe, not hopefully, not if things just went her way, but by any means necessary. And that drive to win is the reason we are here today. You will hear that she didn't care who she had to lie to, who she had to backstab, or what she had to say to overcome any challenge that might come her way. That drive to win inspired choices. Choices made in real time with sight, not hindsight. So that when Dr. Virgie did pose the possibility of pulling Miss Lake from the game, she became filled with fear. She saw her injury as a challenge, another obstacle she needed to overcome in order to finish in first place like she'd always wanted to. Yes, she will tell you that she was desperate. She was desperate to win, desperate to stay, desperate to keep alive the dream she had been chasing for years. And she will tell you that in that desperation, she did beg Dr. Virgie to let her stay. But she will also tell you that she doesn't remember what else she said during that conversation. Conveniently, during the moment most crucial to this case, the moment when key choices were made, she will tell you that she blacked out. But Dr. Virgie remembers what happened that day. And he took seriously his job of assessing whether or not to put Miss Lake back into the game. He did not make this decision lightly. You will hear about this. The injury, the wound, was small. The risk of infection was minor. You will hear about this too. And so because Miss Lake does not remember what she said to Dr. Virgie, she cannot tell you whether she downplayed the symptoms she was undergoing at the time. She cannot tell you whether she told him things that would mislead him in his medical assessment. All she can tell you is that she begged and that she was allowed to stay. So in the end, she got what she wanted. She stayed on the show. She kept chasing that dream of winning by any means necessary. And after getting exactly what she begged for, she now wants to point fingers at the very person she pressured, claiming that the outcome she fought so hard to achieve is now suddenly someone else's fault. But over the course of today, members of the jury, I want you to pay attention to three things. The risk as Christian knew it, the risk as managed by RBN, and that a risk presents a chance, not a certainty. First, you will hear about the risk as Christian knew it. As an avid fan of the show, she knew better than anyone the kinds of challenges involved in the game. She considered the challenges of contending with limited access to food, shelter, and other basic necessities a true test of survival and skill. Skills that she was eager to demonstrate as a contestant on the show. Second, you will hear how RBN managed the risk that is natural to the show, the island environment. Dr. Virgie and his medical team of more than 20 other doctors and professional medical personnel, they took their responsibilities immensely seriously. This was not the first time Dr. Virgie had treated contestant injuries. He was experienced in having done so in prior seasons. And when the decision was made to lower food rations in the 33rd season, naturally, he and his team adjusted medical protocols to ensure the same standard of care as in all prior seasons. you will hear about more rigorous contestant health monitoring and access to water. These were all key new implementations that RBN implemented. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, a risk presents a chance, not a certainty. If a low probability event pans out, that doesn't mean the initial risk was any larger than we initially thought. What it means is that you were in the unlucky few where the risk did pan out. And with hindsight, it's very easy to recast a risk that happens as a certainty. But that's hindsight talking, not sight. Members of the jury, we do not in any way minimize the tragedy that befell Miss Lake. There can be no doubt that the loss of a leg is devastating. I simply ask that over the course of today, you take seriously the charge of evaluating the evidence with sight, not hindsight. And remember that it is the plaintiff who bears the burden of proof in this case. And that is why, at the conclusion of trial today, my colleague, Ms. Starbird, will ask you to find our client not liable.
Are the parties ready to proceed with evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to call Christian Lake to the stand.
Please do so.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Please.
Good afternoon, Ms. Lake.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state your name for the record?
My name is Christian Lake.
And do you know RBN, or Reality Broadcasting Network?
Yes, they own and broadcast the reality TV show The Island.
And can you tell me what you know about this reality TV show, The Island?
The premise is that there are 15 people who get taken to an island somewhere in the world, and they have to undergo various physical and mental challenges and try not to get eliminated in that process.
And what's your relationship to this show, The Island?
Well, for the last several years, I've been sending audition tapes into the show in hopes that I could get on it. I've been a fan for a very long time. I was a fan. Then I got the call one day that I was going to be on the 33rd season of the show. So the filming was started in May 2024, and that's when I showed up.
And while this show was being filmed, what kinds of things did you do on the show?
Well, lots of physical activities. We swam in the ocean. We did ropes courses, like lots of different physical challenges.
And while you were doing these physical challenges, did you ever get injured?
I did. On the final four, when there were just four of us left, we were in a jungle and it was really muddy. And I slipped and fell in part of the course, and a stick pierced my right thigh.
And what did you do after the stick pierced your thigh?
I actually just kept running. I mean, I sort of noticed it at the time, but I think the adrenaline really just pulled me through. And I ended up winning that challenge.
And after you won this challenge, did you do anything to address this stick that was pierced in your thigh?
Well, I looked down and I could see that it was bleeding a lot. I pulled the stick out. And then at that point, that was when the show did their regular medical checks after the challenges, and the medical team at that point sent me to the medical tent for further evaluation.
Do you know Dr. Jesse Vergy?
Yes, I do.
And when you were pulled into this medical tent for further evaluation, did Dr. Jesse Vergy examine your wound?
Yes, he did.
And when Dr. Vergy was examining your wound in the medical tent, did he say anything to you about the severity of it?
He said, he asked me if I wanted to remain on the show. He said, this wound looks bad. And he said, I don't want you to continue on the show if there's any risk of infection.
He said, I don't want you to continue on the show if there is any risk of infection. What did you say in response to these things that Dr. Vergy was bringing up?
Well, I mean, I was just overwhelmed. I mean, you know, I had tried for so long to get on the show, the idea of being taken off the show at this point when I was in such a good position. And, you know, I really thought I could win. So that wasn't a possibility I really wanted to consider.
And when you were being examined by Dr. Vergy, did he make a final decision about whether to let you stay on the show?
He decided to let me stay.
And when this medical evaluation was going on, did you receive any medicine?
No.
And during the medical evaluation, what was going on in your mind? Was there anything affecting your mind?
Well, I mean, I was really tired. I was in some pain. And it was just, you know, we'd been competing for almost 3 weeks at that point. They restrict the amount of food and water that you can have, and like to make up for that, they say that you can fish or catch hunt for food on your own. But you know, I think I was certainly very hungry. I would say malnourished and feeling tired all the time. You know, I mean, I wasn't at my best mentally, for sure, or physically.
And after Dr. Vergy made the decision to allow you to continue competing on the show, what happened after that?
Well, the next day was the next challenge, and let's see, that involved some swimming in the ocean, throwing sandbags around, you know, things like that. And I started out, and I guess I was okay, but midway through the challenge, my leg really began to hurt, and I was going a lot slower than I had hoped. So I ended up being so slow I lost and was eliminated from the competition.
And after this happened, did anything happen to address the fact that you couldn't walk?
Well, at the very end, I really couldn't walk. I couldn't move, and so the medical team came to me, and they decided that they needed to have me taken to the nearest hospital.
Now, when you were taken to the nearest hospital, what happened there?
Well, the doctors examined my leg and found that there was a serious infection.
And when these doctors found that there was a serious infection in your leg at the hospital, Did they say anything else to you?
They told me that they were going to have to amputate my leg to save me.
I'm so sorry that that happened, Miss Lake.
Thank you.
How did this show end for you?
Well, I mean, because of this show, I am an amputee. So, not well. Losing the competition was the least of my concerns at that point. Because of this show, my life has changed.
Thank you for your testimony, Miss Lake. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Miss Lake.
Good afternoon.
You've always been a huge fan of reality TV, right?
Yes,
And your favorite show was The Island?
that's right.
You'd always wanted to be on the show.
Yes.
And in fact, you spent several years in a row auditioning.
Yeah, I did.
So when you finally made it onto the show, that was a dream come true for you, right?
Yeah, I think you could say it was.
So when you finally made it onto the show of your dreams, after all those years of trying, your only goal was to win, right?
Yes, absolutely.
In fact, you were there to win by any means necessary.
Objection, Your Honor. May I be heard? More prejudicial than probative.
Any response?
Yes, Your Honor. It goes to the mental state of the plaintiff at the moment during the show, and so its probative value outweighs its prejudicial value because at issue here are the representations Ms. Lake would have made to Dr. Vergy at the time, and so her motivations for being on the show.
Objection overruled.
Thank you.
So you were there to win by any means necessary.
Within the confines of the show, yeah.
And you didn't care what kinds of challenges you had to overcome.
I mean, I was a physically active person. I was ready for almost anything.
So these challenges could be physical, they could be psychological too, right?
Sure.
You were willing to lie.
Objection, Your Honor. More prejudicial than probative. May I be heard?
Sure.
In this case, the defense is not raising the affirmative defense of comparative fault. So talking about my client's fierce competitiveness and wanting to stay on the show in the way that they're framing it by any means necessary raises the possibility of misleading the jury as to whether they're supposed to be weighing my client and her decision-making with respect to wanting to stay on the show when the only issue in this case is Dr. Vergy and RBN's decision-making in terms of allowing her to stay on the show. And any probative value of my client's mental state when Dr. Vergy was assessing her is far outweighed by this prejudice.
Counselor, isn't lying one of the objectives of the show?
Yes,
Isn't that what anticipated? So it doesn't really go to credibility, does it?
It goes to what she would have been willing to say at the time to stay and participate
I'm going
in
to
the
sustain the objection. I don't find the complying with the outline and rules of the game are a reflection of her credibility here.
show. Understood. So participating, winning by any means necessary, overcoming all these challenges, that was all your choice, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about some of these physical challenges. As an avid fan of the show, you were well aware that there were challenges you would have to meet, right?
Of course.
And so these challenges included contending with limited access to food, shelter, and other basic necessities.
Yes, it did. Although I'll say that I never expected as little food as we got.
And so you knew that there were risks involved in competing on the show.
Of course.
In fact, you even signed a waiver of liability, right?
Objection, Your Honor. More prejudicial than probative as to the waiver. May I be heard?
No, it's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You signed a waiver of liability prior to filming the show, right? For ordinary claims of negligence.
Yes.
And so over the years, as an avid fan, you actually enjoyed watching contestants compete in these challenges and overcome these risks, right?
Yes.
You considered meeting these challenges a true test of survival and skill, right?
Yes.
And so meeting these challenges, limited access to food, shelter, and other basic necessities, that was part of the skill involved in the game, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And so you'd want to demonstrate skill as a contestant in the game, right? That's what contestants do?
Sure.
Especially contestants who are there to win by any means necessary.
Yes.
So, in fact, you were demonstrating skill. You made it to the final four even though every challenge was a struggle, right?
Yes.
Things were going awesome, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was tired, but I was in a great position.
So you would say you had positioned yourself exceptionally well in the game.
Yes.
Let's talk about that Final Four challenge. So you were running, and then you tripped, and then you fell, and some kind of stick pierced your right thigh, right?
That's correct.
But you didn't care at the time, right?
I mean, no. I mean, I was running. I really feel like I had a lot of adrenaline going. You know, sometimes when you get injured in the moment, you don't necessarily feel it right away.
So you just got up and you kept going.
Yes.
So any hunger you experienced at the time did not stop you from winning the challenge, right?
That's true. I mean, I would say that I was hungrier than I would have been if I'd been doing my normal eating routine, but I was able to finish and succeed at winning the challenge.
So that challenge, you were able to recruit both your physical and mental acuity, right? To win that challenge?
Yes.
There were puzzle pieces involved?
Yes.
And it was only after the challenge ended that you stopped to examine your wound, right?
That's correct.
The wound was pretty small, right?
I mean, at the time I thought so. I think Dr. Vergy said that it looked bad, but to my mind it was small.
Is it your testimony that Dr. Vergy said it looked bad?
I can't remember exactly the words he used. Maybe he said deep.
You don't remember the exact words he used to ask you if you wanted to stay on the show, right?
Not exactly, but he did say, I can't let you stay on if there is any risk of infection.
Okay, let's talk about that for a moment. You don't remember the exact words he used to ask you if you wanted to stay on the show, right?
I mean, I guess not.
And you pretty much blacked out after that, right?
Yeah, I don't have a clear recollection of what I said after that.
So conveniently, this is the only thing Dr. Vergy said that you remember with any specificity, right?
I mean, it's pretty clear in my head. I don't know why that sticks out, but it did.
But he didn't say you could continue on the show only if the risk of infection was literally zero, right?
No, the phrasing was, I can't let you stay on the show unless there's no risk of infection.
No risk of infection. It's your testimony that he said you cannot continue unless there's no risk of infection.
I don't know that I can capture the literal words, but no risk of infection it's just something that sticks in my mind.
So was it your understanding that you couldn't continue on the show if you had even just a tiny little scratch?
No. I mean, I think it was in the context of saying that the wound looked pretty bad.
So let's step back a moment and talk broadly about this conversation. You and I just established that you blacked out, right?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't remember if you told Dr. Vergy the pain actually wasn't that bad, right?
No, I mean, I know I must have said that I didn't want to leave the show. I mean, obviously, but I don't remember specifically what I did say.
At the time, you didn't think the injury was serious, right?
No.
It's with hindsight that you would have left the show the second Dr. Vergy asked you to.
Well, I mean, I'm not a doctor myself. It didn't seem to me like that it was a serious injury.
In the end, you convinced him, though, to let you stay on the show, right?
I know that he agreed to let me stay, yes.
And you were begging for it, right?
I mean, I don't know if you could characterize it that way or not. I don't really remember what I said. I just know that it was important to me to stay on.
So it's your testimony that you don't know if you begged Dr. Vergy to let you stay on?
I mean, I guess, let's see. I'm trying to think of my declaration. I probably did say I begged, yeah.
So bottom line, you got what you begged for, right? They let you back on, right?
Dr. Vergy said that I could stay.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Ms. Lake, during cross-examination, you spoke a little bit about how you blacked out. Now, when you testified on direct, you said that Dr. Vergy told you, I can't let you go on if there's any risk of infection. Was this statement before or after you blacked out?
It was before.
So to what extent do you remember this statement from Dr. Vergy?
I remember it really well.
And when you were being examined by Dr. Vergy and asking or begging to stay on, was this an assessment of the severity of your wound?
No, I'm not a doctor. I couldn't assess my wound.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you.
May the witness step down.
Yes.
The plaintiff rests its case in chief.
Okay. Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Defense?
Would you like to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Defense would like to call Dr. Jesse Vergy to the stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Thank you. Can you introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Yes, hello. My name is Dr. Jesse Vergy.
And slowly, so that the members of the jury can take note, can you tell us about your medical experience?
Absolutely. I've been practicing medicine for over 30 years now. I got my bachelor's in biology from the University of California, Berkeley, and my medical degree from Stanford. I spent a number of years in private practice, including as a general physician, and then in a number of years I had my own practice as well.
Do you have a relationship to the defendant, Reality Broadcasting Network, or RBN?
I do.
What is that relationship?
I'm the head of internal medicine for RBN.
And what do you do in that role?
We oversee a number of shows that RBN produces, including The Island.
Okay. I would like to talk about The Island in particular. How long has The Island been on air?
Over 20 years now.
And are contestants, competitors, made aware of the risks of competing on the show before they arrive?
Yes, prior to the start of every season, we make sure to meet with the contestants to express to them the risks that are inherent in the physical competitions and the lack of food that the show has.
Are you and your team present on site?
We are, yes. We are on site to do daily medical examinations of the contestants.
I see. In the 20 years that The Island has been on air, have any contestants ever sustained any injuries?
A few, yes, though mostly minor. Cuts and bruises here and there, a couple of twisted ankles, and 10 to 15 contestants have passed out due to some combination of dehydration and malnutrition, though generally we get them in the medical tent, get them full of fluids, and they're usually just back and happy to be competing again.
You mentioned malnutrition. Does that mean that in past seasons, some contestants have struggled with food?
Yes, that's correct.
And in those past seasons, have any contestants needed to be removed from the show?
No.
Objection, Your Honor, as to substantially more prejudicial than probative. May I be heard?
Yes.
Your Honor, it's not the plaintiff's contention today that the reason Christian Lake was pulled from the show is because of malnutrition. It's our contention today that she was pulled because Dr. Vergy allowed her to keep playing through a wound. Letting the jury hear testimony as to how Dr. Vergy reacted to malnutrition when the issue here is his medical treatment as to a serious medical injury is completely misleading the jury as to what they should be focusing on when making their decision.
Any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff has stated numerous times about information about food policy. Therefore, the food policy and the decisions about food policy would be based on RBN's experience. Dr. Vergy, as the head of internal medicine for the show, would have seen this in person and would be using this information to then make decisions about the food policy as well. Therefore, this goes to the probative value of this question, far outweighing its prejudicial aspect.
So I understand your argument that they've opened the door, so to speak, by asking about malnutrition, but I think the focus really is on what happened in this instance, not what has happened in the past, and therefore I'm going to sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Dr. Vergy, I would like to ask, leaving the malnutrition aside, have any contestants ever needed to be removed from the show before?
No.
And has anybody...
I re-raise my objection, Your Honor.
Yeah, your objection is sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Motion to strike?
So stricken.
Moving on then to the events of this season, what changes happened this season?
There was a reduction in the base food package given to contestants, but that was offset by the ability for contestants to win additional food for winning challenges.
And how did you feel when you first heard about this change to the food policy?
I was concerned.
Did you share those concerns with any RBN official?
I did. I shared my concerns with Tracy Hofstradt, the executive producer of the show.
Would you recognize text messages between yourself and Tracy Hofstradt?
I would.
Your Honor, seeking permission to approach the witness with exhibit...
You may
marked.
approach.
Thank you. I will be approaching the witness with exhibit 2. Approaching opposing counsel to confirm that this is indeed exhibit 2. Thank you. Your Honor, would you like a courtesy copy?
I have a copy, thank you.
Thank you. Approaching the witness. Do you recognize this, Dr. Vergy?
I do.
What is it?
This is a text conversation between me and my boss, Tracy Hofstrat.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the text messages between you and Tracy Hofstrat?
It is.
Would you like a courtesy copy as well? Thank you. Would you read for us the first page of this exhibit?
Sure. It begins with a message from me to Tracy where I say, "Hey boss, I heard that this season the production staff is planning on reducing the food rations given to contestants. Confirming you really want to do this?" Tracy responds, 100%. I then respond, "Even though it would mean an average of 100 to 200 calories less of food per day for each contestant? To be honest, I have some concerns about that move."
Did you have control over the food policy this season?
I did not.
Would you read then page 2 and 3 of the exhibit?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, may I be heard? This
You
is
may be
needlessly
heard, yes.
cumulative. Your Honor, we have no objection to them reading particular parts of this evidence, but as it's already been admitted into evidence, letting the jury hear this entirety is just wasting the court's time. In the interest of judicial efficiency, we just ask that they pick particular quotes to be read onto the record.
Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Tracy responds to my previous text. Concerns? Nobody on the medical staff has said anything that made me concerned. They just said we need to be hypervigilant about making sure we do constant checks on the contestants, increase the water supply for them daily, both of which we can and will do. So what's the problem? To which I respond, "No problem, boss. I just wanted to confirm before we set the medical protocols for this season." Tracy then responds, "Good, there shouldn't be any problems. Remember, we're making a television show. If we lower the rations and make better food more contingent on challenge wins, we have better challenges, which means better TV, which means better ratings." To which I reply, "Totally understood." To which Tracy replies, "Good. Don't stir up problems where there aren't any. We never had any issues with contestants on this show, and we won't this season."
Dr. Vergy, the medical policies, had the medical policies been set this season by the time of your text messages?
They had not.
And who has control over setting the medical policies?
We do as a medical team.
And did you end up changing those medical policies?
We did.
Why?
In response to the changed food policies, we felt that we had to change the medical policies to ensure that we maintain the same standard of care for our contestants.
And what did you do in order to change these medical policies?
As stated in the text messages, we adopted a more rigorous monitoring system and increased the water supply.
And to your knowledge, who first suggested these changes in policy?
It's my understanding that it was first suggested by our medical team.
Thank you. Your Honor, permission to approach the witness to retrieve the exhibit?
Granted.
Approaching the witness. Thank you. I would also move that we admit Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Excuse me?
Admit Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
So admitted.
I want to talk now about exactly what happened right before Miss Lake's injury. You mentioned that contestants have the opportunity to win food above the base rations if they were to win challenges. Having made it to the Final Four, would you say that Christian Lake had done well?
I would, yeah.
And would you say, did you do an examination of Miss Lake immediately before her injury?
I did.
What was Miss Lake's physical condition?
It was apparent that Miss Lake had lost a significant amount of weight, but otherwise seemed fine.
And did you know what Miss Lake's mental condition was?
I did not.
And if you were back in your private practice, would you have known what any patient's mental condition was?
Physical medical condition, yes. Mental medical condition, no.
And why is that?
As much as we would love as doctors to have perfect information about our patients all the time, it does rely on communication, and so we can't necessarily always have that.
So what is your understanding of Miss Lake's cognitive condition immediately before her injury?
My understanding was that Miss Lake was tired, but otherwise very motivated to continue in the game and very motivated to win. During that examination, she spoke at length about her plans and the alliance that she was part of and her grand plan to win this season.
Was there anything in that entire examination that indicated that Miss Lake was not fit to continue with the next challenge?
No.
And had any other contestants struggled with the food to a degree that made you concerned?
Not this season, no.
To discuss now Miss Lake's condition immediately after the injury, did you do an examination of Miss Lake after she sustained her injury?
I did.
What did you find?
When I did the medical examination on Miss Lake after the injury, I found a wound on her right thigh. The wound was about 1/2 inch around and 2 inches deep.
A wound 1/2 inch around. How wide would a wound like that be?
That would be a little bit less than 1/6 of an inch.
Did you do anything to take care of Miss Lake's wound immediately after you saw it?
I did. We cleaned the wound, gave her 2 stitches, and bandaged it.
And during this examination, did Miss Lake say anything that would have increased your concern about her injury?
No, I wouldn't say that. Miss Lake seemed to downplay the injury. I recall her saying that she didn't care about the state of her leg. She just wanted to continue competing in the game. That was what had happened after I approached her and let her know that we were considering removing her from the season.
So when you were looking at the physical wound then, what kind of risks were you looking for when you examined Miss Lake?
There were 3 risks that we were evaluating when looking at the wound. The first was immediate injury, the second was exacerbation, and the third was infection.
Which of those risks were present here?
The first 2 were not. The only risk that was present was a risk of infection.
How much was this risk of infection?
I said some risk. I evaluated it to be a minor risk.
I see. So we heard earlier from Miss Lake that she says you told her that you would not be able to send her out if there was any risk of infection at all. Is that your recollection?
That is not my recollection. I told Miss Lake that we were considering removing her from the game. It was my medical opinion that there was a risk of infection, a minor risk of infection, and it was my medical opinion that it was safe to send Miss Lake out for the remainder of the competition.
I want to make sure that we all understand what you mean with your terminology. We've been using this word, risk. Can you tell us more? What does this word risk mean?
Risk means that there's a certain probability of an infection occurring.
I see. So if there is, say, a 5% chance risk of infection, what does that mean in terms of probability?
Say you have 100 people with the same injury and there's a 5% risk of developing an infection. You would expect 5 people to develop an infection and the remaining 95 would heal as normal.
At the time in which you were evaluating Miss Lake's injury, how many days were there left in the game?
2.
And how many days was it until Miss Lake got full medical attention at a hospital?
She received medical attention the next day.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Please.
Dr. Virgi, I'd like to start by asking about something you just told us about. Now, you just told us if there's a 5% chance, that means 5 out of 100 people are going to get sick, right? 5% risk.
Yes.
You didn't do any sort of risk calculation with Miss Lake, did you?
I did. I evaluated that it was a minor risk for infection.
You couldn't tell us a percentage.
No.
You couldn't tell us what exact risk she had.
I can never be certain. I could just speak in generalities, and generally speaking, it was a minor risk.
Let's talk about what you can be certain about, what you knew about her injury. And you just told us a lot, and like you just told us, you inspected her injury right after she was hurt, right?
Correct.
It was a deep wound, wasn't it?
It was 2 inches deep. It was relatively deep.
Christian had lost a decent amount of blood, hadn't she?
Yes, but nothing that I thought meant that she had to be removed from the show.
You were concerned.
Concerned, yes.
It's actually the closest you'd ever come to pulling a contestant from the show.
Closest relative to the cuts and bruises that we've had on previous seasons.
Because you've never pulled a contestant from the show.
We have never pulled a contestant from the show.
Like you just told us, Christian Lake, she asked you to stay on the show, right?
I would say, yeah, she begged to remain on the show.
Well, I heard a word that you just told us, and I want to talk about it. You said she was downplaying what she was feeling, right?
I don't know about downplaying that. I might have misspoke. She certainly said that she did not care about her leg.
But you did just say the word downplaying, right?
Sure, yes.
Now, patient, they can't downplay how deep an injury is, can they?
No, I suppose not.
They can't downplay how much blood they've lost.
No,
They can't downplay a risk of infection.
no,
You let Christian Lake keep playing, right?
yes,
You were hopeful that nothing would happen. Isn't that right?
yes. I'm hopeful that all my patients are able to make a recovery regardless of what the situation is.
But let's talk about what you knew about this situation, about what you knew about the risk. You knew if that leg got infected, there could be serious repercussions.
Yes, I knew that if the minor risk manifested, that there could be serious repercussions.
You know that risk did manifest, right?
It did.
You know Christian Lake got an infection.
She did.
You know after that last challenge, one of your medical staff told you that Christian could barely walk.
That is correct.
So you had Christian immediately airlifted to a hospital.
That is correct.
This was when you hadn't given her any medication.
It was I treated her the way that I felt was best. Cleaned the wound, stitched it up, bandaged it, got her back in the game.
Well, the way that you saw best, you didn't give her any pain medication.
Not to my knowledge, no.
You didn't give her any antibiotics.
Not to my knowledge.
That's a no.
No.
You didn't even give her any food or water, did you?
Not aside from the rations that had already been doled out and the additional water that we provided.
That's a no.
No.
You know that Christian Lake, when she arrived at that hospital, her leg was amputated, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was amputated because of an infection.
Yes.
You were mortified when you learned that, weren't you?
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about what you knew about the game. You're a fan of the island, right?
I'm a fan of reality TV, yes.
Yeah, you're a fan of reality TV.
Yes.
It's one of the reasons you joined this job in the first place.
Correct.
Like you told us, your job, you oversee all the medical decisions on this show.
I oversee the medical staff. The only decision that I have absolute authority over is whether or not to pull somebody from the game.
And you're the ultimate decision maker on that, aren't you?
Correct.
Now, you just told us a lot about how they reduced the food rations on this show, right?
Correct.
Now, you texted your boss, Tracy Hofstad, about it. Isn't that
did.
right? You're under permission to approach the witness with what has been marked as Exhibit 2.
So granted.
Approaching opposing counsel with what has been marked as the same. Dr. Vergy, I'd just like to draw your attention to some of those text messages on that very last page. Now, Tracy Hofstad, she's your boss, right?
That is correct.
And she's one of the people that was involved in reducing the food rations this season.
Correct.
Now, like you told us, you had some concerns.
Correct.
But Tracy, she told you not to stir up any problems.
That is correct.
She told you that reducing the food, it would make for better TV.
Correct.
Make for better challenges.
Correct.
Make for better ratings.
Correct.
She told you to remember you were making a television show.
Yes.
She told you hadn't had any problems with contestants in the past, isn't that right?
That is right.
She told you wouldn't this season either.
That is right.
And you told us Christian asked you to stay on the show. That wasn't her decision to make, was it?
No, it was my decision.
Your team has the authority to pull someone from the show,
Correct.
and you're the ultimate decision maker.
Correct.
You let Christian keep playing,
Yes.
and you knew when you examined her wound, there were only 2 days left of filming this show.
That is correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. May the witness be excused?
Your
Or
Honor,
is there-
there's a rebuttal.
Rebuttal?
Your Honor, briefly, may I bring out of the witness? Thank you.
Dr. Vergy, I only have 2 very simple questions for you. The first is I'm curious whether or not it's possible to eliminate all risk.
No, I don't believe it's possible to eliminate all risk.
And my second simple question, would it be hubris to value your own personal medical opinion over that of 20 other doctors?
In my opinion, it would be hubris.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions. May the witness be excused?
Yes. Are we ready to proceed to closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Please.
It was all a game to them. Dr. Vergy and RBN didn't care about my client's health. They cared about ratings. They cared about putting on a show. And my client's leg was just collateral damage to them. Now, in this case, you're going to receive this set of jury instructions. And these jury instructions are going to guide the verdict that you come to. The key to this case is right here on the back, jury instruction number 5. It says that to find liability for gross negligence, you have to find that there was an extreme departure from what a reasonably careful person would do in the same position. I am confident that when you enter that jury room, you will find that Dr. Vergy's decision to send my client back into the show after she was injured was an extreme departure from what a reasonably careful person would do in Dr. Vergy's position. Now, at the beginning of this trial, my co-counsel, Ashley Bremner, asked you to focus on 3 key factors. Number 1, Dr. Vergy knew the injury. Number 2, Dr. Vergy knew the risk. And number 3, Dr. Vergy and RBN knew that they wanted to put on a show. I'm going to explain to you why we proved each of these 3 key factors. Now first, Dr. Vergy clearly knew the injury. As you just heard him testify, he's an experienced doctor with years of medical experience under his belt. Not only that, he has a team of 20 doctors that work with him on the show. So between him and this team of 20 doctors, they clearly had the ability to accurately assess my client's injury. Further, my client was in no position to assess this injury herself. Now, the other attorney is going to get up here and tell you a lot about how my client wanted to stay on the show. But it's important to know that there is not an affirmative defense of comparative fault being raised here. What that means is that you are not being asked to weigh how negligent my client's decision to stay on the show because she wanted to compete was against Dr. Vergy's medical determination. You are being asked to assess Dr. Vergy's medical determination in isolation. And during that medical determination, Dr. Vergy knew that my client was vulnerable. He knew that the show had lowered the food rations. He knew that these challenges were very grueling and that these competitors were often tired after the challenges. Sure, my client didn't spell it out for him that she was in a vulnerable position, but he had enough information to know that it was his decision whether she should be pulled. Her pleading to stay on the show should not have been a factor in that decision. Now, the second factor is that Dr. Vergy knew the risk. You heard my client testify that Dr. Vergy told her, "I can't let you go on if there is any risk of infection." But Dr. Vergy told you that there was a risk of infection. And regardless of what specifically he said, he clearly knew that there was a significant risk of infection. He knew that these challenges on the show involved things like swimming and crawling through the mud. After all, he's worked for the show for a very long time. So between him and his team of 20 doctors, they clearly should have been able to assess the fact that sending my client onto the show with a fresh wound into these dirty, dirty challenges created a significant risk of infection. But Dr. Vergy didn't pull my client from the show. Instead, he simply cleaned the wound, gave her 2 stitches, bandaged it up, and without even giving her medicine, sent her on her way. Now I want to pause here and remind you of these jury instructions. Ask yourself, was Dr. Vergy's decision to send my client back onto the show with a fresh, unmedicated wound into these dirty, dirty challenges what a reasonably careful person would do? You will find that it wasn't. It was gross negligence. Now, why did Dr. Vergy do this? This brings us to the third key piece of this puzzle. Dr. Vergy and his bosses at RBN knew that they wanted a show. Let me remind you about these text messages. In these text messages, Dr. Vergy raises his concerns about how the show decided to lower food rations this season. In response, his boss, Tracy Hofstadt, questions him. She says, "So what's the problem?" And after that, Dr. Vergy quickly backs down and says, "No problem, boss." In response, Tracy Hofstadt doubles down. She says, "Remember, we're making a television show." And after that, she emphasizes, lowering the food rations will mean better challenges, better TV, and better ratings. In response to that, Dr. Vergy says, "Totally understood." Dr. Vergy totally understood that RBN's first priority was not the health and well-being of the contestants. Dr. Vergy totally understood that instead, RBN's priority was better challenges, better TV, and better ratings. They just wanted to put on a show. And Dr. Vergy himself just wanted to put on a show. After all, he was just following boss's orders, and he told you that he's a fan of reality TV himself. Now, in this case, it is absolutely true that Dr. Vergy's decision was an extreme departure from what a reasonably careful person would do. But you don't need to be absolutely certain that this is true. In this case, our burden is a preponderance of the evidence. That's a very low burden, and it simply means that you need to believe that it is more likely than not that Dr. Vergy's decision was an extreme departure from what a reasonably careful person would do in order to find that RBN is liable for gross negligence. Today, we have met that burden. My client, Christian Lake, lost her leg because of what transpired on this show. She was in a vulnerable position, and even though Dr. Vergy knew the injury and knew the risk, he knew that his bosses at RBN just wanted to put on a show. After that, that led to my client's leg being amputated because it was all a game to them. And because of this, my client's life will never be the same. I am confident that when you enter the jury room, you will find that RBN is liable for gross negligence. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Closing argument by the defense, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Sight, not hindsight. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case asks you to do something that is hard. It asks you to set aside hindsight. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge something that everybody in this courtroom knows. What happened to Miss Lake is a tragedy. Nobody wanted this, and no one in this courtroom is immune from that harm. But sympathy and the temptation to use hindsight is not a substitute for the legal standard that you swore to apply. The law does not judge using hindsight because the defendants did not have the benefit of time of sitting in a courtroom months after the fact with the knowledge of how it turned out. With hindsight, everything is easy. Every risk is obvious, every outcome inevitable. The law asks you instead to judge with the defendant's sight at the time. This means that the law is not asking you whether or not the outcome is tragic. It was. The law is not asking you whether or not a different decision would have led to a different outcome. And because this isn't even a case of simple negligence, the law doesn't even ask whether or not you think the defendant's conduct was reasonable. In this case, the law is asking you whether or not the defendant's conduct was a gross deviation, an extreme departure from what a reasonable person would have done at the time. Now, that is a high bar, and it should be, because when consenting adults voluntarily engage in risky behavior, the law does not punish every outcome that ends badly. When judged against this standard, the evidence is clear. My client's behavior does not meet that high bar. At the beginning of this trial, my co-counsel, Miss Lee, asked you to pay attention to three things: the risk as Christian knew it, the risk as RBN managed it, and that the risk was a chance, not a certainty. So let's start with the risk as Christian knew it. Christian was not dragged onto the island. She was a fan. She saw season after season, and she was inspired. She wanted to do what people across the ages have always wanted to do, to take their physical body, to push it against physical limits and strain to surmount those challenges. That was the goal. That's what she wanted to do by any means necessary. That's why she submitted application, year after year. And when she finally got the call, the go-ahead, Christian wasn't made to rely on only the television presentations of what she saw. Instead, she got the benefit of RBN reaching out to her, making sure to brief her about the toll that the show could take on her body. They even went so far as to send her a waiver to make sure that she was acknowledging these risks. And Christian signed it. So this is important because RBN is not hiding that risk. Instead, they're highlighting it. And let's not even just look at what Christian knew before the show. Let's think about what she knew while she was there. 2.5 weeks into the show, she had done so many incredibly physically demanding challenges, and so far, she had surmounted them. She knew about the toll that it took on her body. She knew about the hunger. She knew about how difficult each challenge would be. And when Dr. Vergy went to go and examine her the morning of her injury, what he heard was that even at that point, Christian wanted to keep going. Now, you may ask yourself, why did Christian want to join in the first place? Why did Christian sign? And why, especially on the island, did Christian want to keep going? The answer to that is like a patient who takes medicine knowing side effects. The risks to Christian were worth it. But Christian wasn't the only one who saw the risks. RBN saw it too, and they took steps to manage it. RBN didn't send Christian and the other contestants out into the world alone. No, they sent them with a medical team, 20 doctors and medical staff. And those doctors included Dr. Vergy, who you heard from earlier today. Dr. Vergy, who with an education at Berkeley, at Stanford, and 30 years of experience, came to head the division that oversaw the island. They weren't lounging around. They were doing daily monitoring, checking their vitals, checking their weight, trying to make sure that before every single challenge, each contestant was actually ready for the challenge that they were about to face. They would have known the challenge. They had been shooting for 20 years. Now, we know something else from the way that food policies were set this season. Dr. Vergy wasn't the first one to come up with the idea of what they would do in order to help alleviate the strain of the decreased base food rations. It was somebody on the medical staff. So we know that Dr. Vergy, although he was the top medical professional there and he was the one in charge, he listened to the other doctors, which means that as he made decisions, it wasn't just his information, his thought process, his medical experience that was informing this, but that of the 20 other doctors and their medical staff. Now, when we think about the food policy, we also see that Dr. Vergy was in charge of that also. While the executive producers may have, let me rephrase, the executive producers were in charge of the food policy, but Dr. Vergy and the medical team were in charge of the actual medical policy. And this was where they acted as a counterbalance to say, well, if there's an increased strain on our contestants, we need to increase the safety net that exists to protect the contestants. And that is exactly what they did. RBN sent people out with medical professionals with medical experience, and they instituted daily monitoring. So ask yourselves, does this sound like an institution who is recklessly running into risk? Or is it an institution that saw the risk and took steps to mitigate it? The law doesn't require eliminating all risk. As we heard from Dr. Vergy, you can't even do that. But even if we were to say this, the law doesn't require this. If it did, driving couldn't exist. Hiking couldn't exist. So many of the things that we care about in the world would not exist because we cannot get rid of that little bit of risk that is residual. Which takes us to our third point. We'll think about the moment of the injury with the defendant's sight. When Dr. Vergy went to go examine Christian Lake, he looked for what he had been trained to do as a medical professional. He examined the wound, he took steps to take care of it, and he listened to what Christian said. Now, this is also important because doctors don't have perfect information. We're not asking patients to self-diagnose, but instead, what we know is that doctors rely on patients to report information, pain, symptoms, sensations, which means that if a patient minimizes the pain or forgets to report a sensation, the doctor's risk assessment changes. And that is not because the doctor is negligent, but it's because for all the good it's given us, medicine is an imperfect science. And here, again, when Dr. Vergy listened, after he was done looking at the wound, he listened to see if there was anything else that he should know that should raise his concern above the minor risk that he observed. And he only heard that Christian Lake wanted to keep going. So we may ask, Was Christian's judgment clouded by the fact that she didn't have enough food? But then we remember that the base food rations weren't the only way that contestants were able to get food. Instead, contestants were also able to get more food by winning more challenges. And Christian, as she admitted herself, had positioned herself as well as possible. Would Christian have left, knowing the extent of her injury? Would Dr. Vergy have sent her away immediately? With the benefit of hindsight, of course. But with the information that it was available at the time, the risk appeared minor. We heard from Dr. Vergy that even a minor risk sometimes manifests into a bad outcome. But this risk is a chance, not a certainty. Sometimes the bad event hits. Sometimes people get unlucky. And Christian is one of those times in which a person gets unlucky and the bad probability becomes a real outcome. And that is tragic, but it's not evidence of gross negligence. The plaintiff's case rests entirely on hindsight. They would have you say that because some event happened, that an earlier decision must have been extreme. But the plaintiffs, while they would have you believe that there was a significant risk at the time of Christian's injury, were not the ones evaluating, and the plaintiffs' representation are also, unfortunately, not medical professionals. What we know from Dr. Vergy, who was there, who did do the examination, was that the risk was minor. And again, sometimes this becomes a tragedy. The law does not deal an assessment of fault every single time that a bad outcome hits. Instead, the law exists to hold people accountable when they act with extreme irresponsibility. But that is not what happened here. RBN started by making sure those affected, the contestants, were aware of the risk. Then, they sent medical professionals with them out into the challenges to be there on site. These medical professionals used their medical judgment based on the information available, and they made a decision which, with the information at the time, was well within the range of reasonable responses. So when we turn to the question at the heart of today's case, I ask you to use sight, not hindsight. When you ask whether or not the defendant's conduct was a gross departure from what a reasonable person would have done, think about the information that was available at the time. When viewed against this high standard and doing as the law commands, with sight, there is only one answer that is in accordance with the law. That is why I ask you, members of the jury, to define the defendant not liable. Defendant rests.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay.
May I proceed?
Yes, proceed, please.
Now, Ms. Starbird, counsel for RBN, just told you that our entire case rests on hindsight. But this isn't true. It was with sight, not hindsight, that Dr. Vergy assessed that my client's wound was deep. It was with sight, not hindsight, that Dr. Vergy knew that these challenges were often very dirty. And it was with sight, not hindsight, that Dr. Vergy decided to not even give my client medicine, but instead to send her back into the competition with this fresh, unmedicated wound, knowing with sight, not hindsight, about the dirtiness of these challenges. Now, I want you to think about these jury instructions, and I want you to think about whether Dr. Vergy's decision to send my client into this competition with her fresh wound without even giving her medicine was an extreme departure from what a reasonably careful person would do. You will find that it absolutely was. It was gross negligence. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
At this point, we step outside and confer, and we'll be back with our decision. I think that's how it goes.
Great. Well, I am on microphone now. My name's Spencer Pahlke. I'm the co-director of our trial competition program here at Berkeley Law, along with Jenna Forrester. So first point is, this was awesome. This was really fun. Bales started in the same year as, I graduated in 07. My law school colleague, classmate was Peter Bales, named after his grandfather. This has been going on for like 18 years now, and this was an excellent final round, so really good job. And let's have another round of applause, actually, for how well that went. Next main point, please, all of you, no matter where you are, if you're at counsel table, if you're a witness, if you're sitting back there, please try out for trial advocacy for our mock trial team if you enjoyed this. It's really fun. We have an exceptionally good program. It's supportive. It is a great community. Please try out for it. That especially goes for the advocates we got to see today. I have, through the years, sat through lots of boring, long judge commentary. I hate it. I usually, at this point, just totally tune out. You're welcome to do that, at least while I'm talking. I will keep it very short and just have 2 comments per person, okay, on what I think we can work on and what I really liked, okay? So we'll start off with Ashley. I really enjoyed your ownership of the courtroom, and it was interesting to me that was really on display in your cross-examination, and it was not as much on display in your opening statements. So my thing that I really liked was how you owned the courtroom in the cross-examination. By that I mean you moved with purpose. Your questions were short. Each word needed to justify its existence in your exam, which made it seem precious, which I really enjoyed. I'd like to see you translate that into your entire performance. In the opening, you started near counsel table, almost leaning on it as if you needed it, which you didn't. I'd like you to get right out there and do it just as you did in the cross. So there you go. Kate, so I really enjoyed how you turned to us intentionally on 2 occasions in your direct examination, once direct, once redirect, to share with us a point that was really important. I could find it, I could dig it up in my notes, but you turned to us and you shared it with us. I really enjoyed that. What I would like to see you do is explore that more. Because again, a lot of this actually I would say is ownership for everybody. Each of us should demonstrate our ownership of the courtroom. For you, I liked how you did that intentionally, but I felt like there were other times where you were not standing, nice and vertical, and the hands starting down kind of center like this is in a position of power, either I think down at your sides or at a more affirmative resting position. And then in the closing, for example, in that same point, let's gesture. If we want to gesture, which I think we should, I love to gesture, let's do it right out of the gates and more forcefully and largely. Here, it was a little bit smaller, right? So I like the intentional turn to us to involve us, but let's build on that by having more of your personality and ownership in the courtroom, okay? There we go. That's 2 out of 4. We're making good progress here. Let's go to Jacqueline. So you did the first cross, right? That's difficult, right? I liked how your default was not to say each question should end in right, isn't that true, correct, etc. Your default was instead to have downward inflection and silence. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really good. What I would like to see more from your cross examination would be to ask yourself about the links of each of your questions, okay? Can we shorten it down? Can we shorten it down? As I mentioned a minute ago with Ashley, every word should have to justify its existence in our cross-examination, right? So it doesn't feel like there's anything extra. Every single word is one I have chosen because I'm gonna make you say yes repeatedly, okay? So let's build on your instinct to not add in the extra words of right, isn't that true, that kind of thing. But let's subject it to the substance of the question and see if we can shorten out our questions even more, okay? All right, Katrina, so I really enjoyed your presence in the courtroom. I don't know if you have do you have a history in like newscasting or broadcasting or something like this? I don't know. I don't know. I'm judging by the laugh. You don't. You have a natural authoritativeness too, which is a nice advantage to have. I really like that. You have to be mindful of your advantages, right? Because it caused you, I think, especially in the closing, as I'm doing now, we're all guilty of it, me especially, talking too quickly, okay? When it's easy to talk quickly, you tend to talk quickly. Not you, all of us, tend to talk quickly. And then we tend to use more words than we need to. I think, quite candidly, you could give an even more powerful closing if it was literally half as many words and half as fast. It would be even more powerful, okay? So I love the natural authoritativeness you have, but be mindful of it and don't let it cause too much speed on your part, okay? Those are my comments. Great work, everybody.
Hi everyone, my name is Dario Maciel. I am an alum. I was also on the trial team and did these competitions, so I know what it's like to be in your shoes and how much work and effort it takes, especially at a place like this where you're encouraged to do journals and slips and so much other things. That you taking the time to do this competition for yourself to develop your advocacy is really important, and I am blown away by the quality of this trial. You all did so well, and I'm really impressed. So know that you're here for a reason. You're at this final because you put in the hard work, because you impressed the judges in the previous rounds, and because all of that really showed through in the way that you performed. So with that, I'll give a couple of pieces to each of you. We'll start with Ashley. Ashley, you had such excellent confidence in everything that you did. You're the kind of person that I can see in any courtroom that you go into. You'll know exactly why you're there. You'll know the rules of how things work, and you know how to talk to people in a really natural way. So that really shone through for me. You had excellent word choice. Like Spencer was saying, your movement was so intentional and thought through that there wasn't anything where I felt like, oh, is she taking this step because she's nervous? Is she taking this step because she doesn't know what else to do? For you, it came through that that was exactly what you wanted to be doing, and you were in full control of how you were presenting to the jury. One thing that I would encourage you to do is you have this natural confidence. Sometimes when you have that natural confidence, it can be a little harder for you to take a more conversational tone. That doesn't mean be casual. Casual is not the word that we're looking for, just conversational and natural. And if you punctuate the thing you're already doing with those moments of being more grounded and your personality that everyone around you see, I think that'll make it even more powerful. But you did such an excellent job. I was really impressed. And then Kate, so Kate, for you, I love the evocative language that you use. When I was hearing you during the closing argument, it really brought to light how your case about this being unreasonable or extreme really crystallized for me for the first time, I think, in your case. And that was because you were using this evocative language of like the dirty challenges that they did, how physically strenuous it was. I would have liked to also see that kind of more throughout your case as well for the two of you, especially in your examinations. I don't think that came through as much, but it really crystallized for me when you did it in the closing argument, Kate. One piece of advice for you is when you're doing your direct examination, the witness is the star, and you did that really well. One other thing that you can do, though, is you get to set the tone for the witness's answers. So if you are talking about the dirty challenges, you want that dirtiness to come out in your voice too. If you want them to be more somber, you can ask the question more somberly. If you want them to talk about a panicked moment and what they're relating, you can also do that with your voice. So there's ways that you can let the tone that you're bringing to the question seep into the kind of answer that you want from the witness. So otherwise, again, excellent job. For the two of you, plaintiff side was very strong. Okay. Now for the defense side. So for Jacqueline, one of the things that is so hard for anyone to do is to really master the fundamentals in the skills that they do. Even when it's a finalist at a competition, sometimes, I'll see someone do a cross-examination and they think, well, I'm in the finals, let me ask a couple of open-ended questions that I think I know the answer to. I even started, before you did your cross-examination, I said, I'm gonna keep a tally of every time that she asks a non-leading question, and there was nothing on my tally. So that to me is a huge sign that you understand what your task is when you're doing a cross-examination, that you're there to talk about your narrative. You don't care what the witness has to say. And having only closed-ended questions is something that shows a lot of control. I know that sounds like it's a very basic thing to do, but because it's so basic and because it's so fundamental, it's something that I rarely see done as cleanly as you did it. So I was really impressed with the way that you stuck to what you have to do in a cross-examination. I loved also that I think you did the opening statement as well, right? So you used a lot of repetition of the theme that you were trying to get across. I love that about it as well. And let me see what my note was for things to improve for you. I mean, I think that one thing that I would suggest you work on is when the witness gives you something unexpected or when something happens that's unexpected, play it off. Pretend like you're just your same confident self, that whatever the witness is doing that was unexpected didn't affect you. I think it's important to be able to bounce back from when you're not getting the answers you want from the witness to still maintain that control for yourself as well. So that's the one thing I would say for you. And then Katrina, again, just like with Ashley, excellent confidence. You seemed really comfortable in everything that you were doing. I know you're laughing now and maybe it didn't feel that way. Like maybe you felt like a little bit nervous. If that was the case, it didn't show through at all. Everything that you did was so poised and so controlled. And at the same time, what I like about the way that you were presenting your statement was you weren't just professional. Like Spencer mentioned, it sounded like you had, some experience with either, I don't know, some kind of performance or speech or newscasting, something like that. But at the same time, you were also really personal and personable and brought that to bear as well. I agree with some of the notes that Spencer gave you as well. I think you could have shaved off a couple of minutes to the closing and just done with giving it more breathing room and more space, slower speech, more pauses, things that would let the message that you're delivering to the jury sink in. Aside from that, I think that just creating more of that presence by letting the jury hang on your every word would have just skyrocketed your performance, which is already really strong and very excellent. So everyone did an amazing job, and I know that this was a really close competition, but I'm super impressed, and I'm happy that I got to see all of you do all of this today. And I'll kick it over to our judge.
So I'm going to keep it really short. Ashley, in your opening, you didn't seem to be as comfortable as you were in your cross-examination. I really enjoyed your cross-examination. I thought that you ended with your strongest points, and that is always a good thing to do. Katie, you have a very nice demeanor. Okay, I mean, you're going to be arguing not to, 2 judges, but to 14 or 16 jurors, and the way in which you can argue your case without is very, very nice. It's not going to be at all off-putting to the variety of jurors that you're going to be confronting. One thing I wanted the plaintiffs to do that they didn't do, I focused a little differently. I'm not as experienced in judging competitions as Spencer is, for instance. I wanted you guys to go through the jury and the verdict form and say, here's what we have to show. We showed it. There's four things. Did they have a duty? Yes. Did they violate that duty? Yes. And actually take the jury through that to get them to the verdict that you're looking for. Then Jacqueline, you have a good killer instinct when it comes to your cross-examination. Although, with that killer instinct, you have to learn how to temper it. At one point, you became argumentative, and I was waiting for them to make that objection, but they didn't. But that's good, because you have to be a killer to be in this profession, in a sense. Katrina, you are able to speak just as you would speak in a casual conversation with the members of the audience, instead of saying, to the jury, instead of giving a speech, you're actually talking to them in a natural way, and that was really good. I was waiting in the closing arguments for you guys to bring up the waivers, which was the biggest piece of evidence that you had in your favor, and just like they didn't go through the jury verdicts, you guys didn't bring up the waiver. So, I mean, those were the things that I was waiting to see in terms of how the cases were handled, but overall, you guys did an awesome job. I always like to see plaintiffs win, but, that's because I did plaintiffs' work. But anyway, and I don't like big insurance companies. But what can I say? Thank you all so much.
And shout out to our witnesses. Thank you all. Thank you both as well for being here.
You were both very convincing, by the way.
All right, so we are now bringing up the very fun trophies. Sorry. Maybe just like right here. So before we announce our Bales 2026 finalists and champions, I just wanted to give another thank you to our wonderful, wonderful judges. So how this is going to work is I'm first going to announce our finalists and ask that you please come up here. I will present these wonderful trophies to you. And then after we celebrate and congratulate our finalists, we will be celebrating and announcing our champions. So, drum roll, please. The Bales 2026 finalists are the defense team, Katrina and Jacqueline. If you guys want to stand right here, we can get a picture of you. Thank you. Another big round for our finalists. And now, our Bales 2026 champions are the plaintiff team, Kate and Ashley. Sorry, I'm not really holding this very well. Thank you so much. So we will be having a reception in the Warren Room. It is right down there after to celebrate the final round. I hope that you will all join us there. We will also be announcing the best attorney and best witnesses for this year's competition. And I hope to see you all there soon. Congratulations again, everyone.